ecstatic to have Derek Norsworthy. Oh, shoot. Never mind. We'll do it again. I forgot he had to hit recording. Hello, Floodgate family. Welcome to this edition of MedTech Emerging Minds. And I am absolutely ecstatic to have Derek Norsworthy, CEO of NeuroCatch, here to join us to talk about himself and the cool things happening with NeuroCatch. Derek, thank you so much for joining MedTech Emerging Minds. So happy to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to be able to speak to you and your audience.
Awesome. Well, Derek, I've got a chance to get to know you a little bit, and but I know the audience isn't the same. So tell us a little bit about you and, of course, all the cool things you guys are doing at NeuroCatch, what NeuroCatch is.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Derek Norsworthy. I'm the CEO of NeuroCatch. My background started off as clinical. I've always been a really curious person. So a clinical person with curiosity leads you into medtech and innovation. So I had a career in building and scaling medtech companies. And then about a year and a half ago, I landed here at NeuroCatch, which is an objective point-of-care assessment tool for cognitive function. And we've really been making a lot of traction in the market there. So kind of the task for me was to come into the company, work on building a commercial rollout for the plan. Are we live or should I pick that up? Or
we could start over. We didn't like that, so that's no problem. We can keep pulling through, make it conversational, but I'll start from the glad to have you. So I'll start at the top. Okay. We're so ecstatic to have Derek Norsworthy, with CEO of NeuroCatch, here to join us, talking about all the incredible things happening in NeuroCatch. Now, I've had the opportunity to get to know Derek, but not everyone else here has. So give us a little bit about you and, your background and, of course, some of the cool thing about NeuroCatch.
Absolutely. Well, excited to be here. My background is clinical. I was curious when I started in the clinical space, and that led me into innovation and ultimately a career in medtech. And now I'm here as the CEO of NeuroCatch, which is an objective cognitive assessment point of care tool for all neurological disorders that are out there. So what we do is we put a cap on your head, and we have a standardized automated system that produces a report of what we call brain vital signs, and we do that in just 6 minutes.
6 minutes. So tell me a little bit, if someone doesn't know brain assessment, give me an idea of the problems, what's happening in this space, what's available today, what's going on?
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. So if you look at the entire landscape, over the last 40 years, there's been incredible innovations in things like cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So things that are familiar to us now, like the blood pressure cuff and the glucometer, which are point of care assessment tools for those areas, are standard of care right now. But in the neuro space, there hasn't been a whole lot change in like the last 30 years. So a little background on the company is one of our founders, Dr. Ryan Darcy, was building some of the most advanced neuroimaging labs in the world. And he saw that the problem was there was an access to care problem. So to actually get in to get the type of data that you needed, there was tons of referrals that were, kind of stood in the way of that, as well as it was about a 3-hour study to get this type of data. So about 25 years ago, he'll be happy that I just named his age there, but he kind of made his mission to take an engineering feat to do what he calls translational neuroscience, to be able to provide a vital signs framework for the brain that could be just as synonymous as the blood pressure cuff or glucometer in the neurological space.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much in the brain. It's that one last undiagnostic spot, right? Where now, unless you had a lab in 3 hours and referrals in the geographic area, being able to bring it and democratize it down to the people so it can be, hey, standard of care, you got hit in the head, you have, post-operative, let's see what your brain function looks like, just like you would your blood pressure.
Yeah, and that's kind of what gets me out of bed every morning is, the current standard of care is, more subjective. So the thing that I always say is that we ask people with compromised neurological function, or at least suspected compromised neurological function, to use their brain to report on how their brain is doing in a subjective assessment. And I'm thinking, we have iPhones and we have, Teslas and all this other stuff. So the brain is kind of the last frontier for, objective cognitive assessment at the point of care. So that's what NeuroCatch does. It introduces, just a point of care assessment to where we can actually look at how the brain is responding to stimuli in real time and give clinicians data in a report for them to inform their clinical decisions.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I think about taking from 3 hours to 6 minutes. That's a massive shift, and the fact that you're asking people who might be cognitively impaired to through for that assessment. It gives you some info, but it's obviously not very reliable.
Yeah, we think that it's unreliable and error prone. Understanding that we are earning our place in the market as well and building trust with clinicians and providers, in our landscape. But we just believe in a better way for cognitive assessment, and we're seeing it more and more. Like there's things that are on the rise right now, like Alzheimer's, dementia, brain fog, all these things that they're very just mystical. What's actually going on there when someone says, I'm not quite feeling like myself. Well, for me, I feel like the doctors are a little bit at a disadvantage right now by not having, just something in the office they can put on a person's head and be able to, just automated push button, have a report pop out just as easy as a blood pressure cuff. I think about, back in, like there was a time probably when a guy came in with, red face and said they felt really weird and they had high blood pressure, but we didn't know it. It's similar to what's going on in brain right now. Or maybe someone's sweating if they had diabetes, and they're in DKA or something, and we didn't know it at some point or another. Thank goodness that there were innovations there. So, I feel personally, understanding the technology that we have, that it's our responsibility to be able to deliver a product to people in order for them to be able to advocate better for their patients and, the patients to understand their brain health a little better.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's such an impact. So where are you guys on this journey? Yeah, I guess you started 25 years ago. So where are you now? You brought in commercialization. Is this FDA approved in the market? Where are you guys today?
Yeah, so the company was, kind of cut its teeth in research. In 2019, NeuroCatch was brought into a study with Mayo Clinic, and they were looking at concussion in ice hockey players. And the study was, put together extremely well. But the one problem they were facing was that there was just not a quick way to get an objective assessment on these, the people who were participants in the study. So Dr. Darcy Ryan, he had been publishing on this stuff called brain vital signs. And some of the researchers at Mayo Clinic picked up on some of his publications and invited NeuroCatch into that study. Because there was a need for a quick point of care assessment tool. So that kind of led into NeuroCatch being involved in a number of research studies. It's got about 300 publications behind it to the moment, and that was the early days. But where we're at now is once we saw that beyond research that the commercial market was looking for a point of care assessment tool. About 2 years ago, we started on a track of commercialization as a company, and we're now about in our second year of commercialization as a product. The company's been around for about 10 years, a lot of heavy roots in research, but we're just now getting out to where we're starting to be more commercial with the product and take it to more of a mainstream. And right now, our North Star is to establish NeuroCatch as the standard of care for cognitive assessment.
That's awesome. And how big, if that standard of care occurs, give me a nice sense of the addressable market. I mean, what's that?
Well, it's about 1 in 3 people right now globally are affected by a neurological disease. So it's quite a tremendous number. It's in the billions at a global scale. But we are, obviously when you look at, a total addressable market like that, it's like, wow, this is an incredible space. But as a startup company, you have to be extremely strategic about the way you go to market, about the way you establish yourself in the market and establish trust and reliability, with your stakeholders that are out there, namely neurologists and clinicians who will be using the tool in practice.
Yeah. So there's a big market, but staying focused on the people that are going to be closest to it and spread out from there really is the market strategy is what I hear you saying.
Absolutely. And it was one of the things when I first came to the company is like, the market was so big and the application was so big. It's like, where do we actually start with this thing? And so as you're running a business, you have to look at things like you're managing cash flow and you're managing resources, and you're also, trying to market your product to specific audiences. So over the past year, we've really, really just drilled down on a really focused market in territories. And then we look to scale that once, as we continue to establish ourselves in those particular markets.
Yeah, that makes sense. Focused is effectiveness is what an old leader used to tell me, right? You could do a lot of things, and the enemy of great is not bad. It's usually good, because you try to do too many good things, you can never get great.
Yeah, and that's for us right now. Like, we look at this incredible market, but we are actually, to be frankly honest, we're looking at, large cities right now that have a high density of our target, our target audience, which is going to be neurologists. So namely San Francisco, Phoenix. So as a startup company, we're being really specific about the way we address that audience, understanding that there's a landscape out there. We'll always keep ourselves open to opportunities, but really starts to drill down on those particular markets, and then all the while building a foundation. If you're going to set the standard of care, there's a lot of things that go into that. So we're also conducting research with really prominent universities to be able to say, hey, this tool is validated. This is how we use it in research. And then we're over here trying to put it in people's hands, on the backside of it. So very strategic in the way that we're doing it, and with incredible focus. Because as you know, running a company, balancing all the things from a finance side to actually getting the product in the field, fundraising and so forth is always something you got to keep your eye on. But it's a lot of fun for me. I love doing this stuff.
That's great. That's great. I'm curious, as you're starting this commercial and market adoption, it seems to me, having vital signs for every other part of your body, but not having the brain seems like a no-brainer, I guess. What's the barrier? What's keeping people from adopting rapidly?
Well, it's comfort. We all like things that we're comfortable. It's human nature, and so I think that's a lot of it. And then understanding how it works in the clinical workflow. So one of our competitive advantages is that we do it in 6 minutes. And what we recognize is in a clinical setting, we've all been to the doctor and sat in the room twiddling our thumbs for 10 to 15 minutes while the doctor's making their rounds. So what we feel like is really understanding how we can fit into that clinical workflow, and then teach our providers how to use it in clinical workflow, and then the application of brain vital signs, to a cognitive assessment treatment plan, and ultimately validating the outcomes and the incredible therapeutics that are out there in the space.
Right. And it seems like there's some other competitors in emerging the market, Cerebell and Zeto and things, and I'd imagine that kind of helps the message a little bit. Usually I find that with emerging utilizations, having other people talk about it helps accelerate adoption. Are you finding that to be the case?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we look at, these other companies that are out there, ultimately we're part of we're part of the solution. We don't want to say that we are the only solution that are out there. We are part of the solution, and we're looking to, help society and improve the human condition by having a better understanding of the brain. So NeuroCatch is going to be a great fit for a very large audience. And then there's, some of our competitors or even collaborative people are going to bring other data points and other features to the market that are not specific within our scope. But it goes back to that focus. What do we do really, really well? And we actually just we got our automated patent back on standardization of NeuroCatch. So what that means is that we now just got the proprietary rights to push button automation, which means that if I run the test, if you run the test, Jack runs the test, the report's going to come out the same every time. So having that automation is going to be, really crucial for, widespread adoption, because that just, really galvanizes the integrity of the data that we're providing to the providers who are using the product.
That's incredible, because as we know, personnel in a hospital is probably the biggest pinch points they usually have, that and OR suites. So, and being able to kind of solve that where you don't have to be trained, anyone can hit the button.
Yeah, a qualified health professional can run the test. So it's super simple, super easy to run. And as you said, I mean, in health tech, being in health tech for quite a few years, you can have the absolute, coolest and most incredible technology out there. But the first question is coming from a clinic manager or a provider or a stakeholder is, what kind of staff is this going to take to run this? Right. How is this going to interrupt my clinical workflow? So just as important as the technology is how it fits into clinical workflow.
That's awesome. Well, you guys have gone a long way, and it's an exciting time getting adoption, dealing with market and creating that. But I'm sure there's been some challenges, some surprises along the way. I'd be wondering if you share with some of our audience, so they, some of them are budding entrepreneurs, can learn from your lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the key lesson right now for us is focus. Is that when you are a startup company and you really want to, you're purpose driven and want to change the world, And when you look at a global audience that's in the billions, where do you start? And then when you start to really focus your team in on where do you start, it seems small. But, for me, I think about it as I always use the football analogy. I love getting first downs. I don't have to throw the Hail Mary every time. If I can march the ball down the field 10 yards at a time, I eventually get a touchdown. So I explain that to our team all the time. So just, relentless execution and focus on that market to, get validation in those markets and so forth has been a key feature for us, and then listening to our customers as well. So as we're not trying to grow too fast, but grow very strategically, introducing a new product into the market, or else you'll run the risk of, we talk about managing cash flow. If you get out over your skis too much too early with a new technology, there's a ton of technology that just did not make it or drew and just kind of dried up on the vine per se, because it was not strategically managed. And I just say all that comes back to focus and then relentless execution on a very specific and targeted go-to-market plan.
Yeah, I think you gave some really good nuggets there. It's not, because a lot of people get excited by that TAM question I told you, and like, look at all this we can get, and they want to go get it all out of the gate, and it's getting that first down, that one beachhead that you can get, start there. I think the second thing you mentioned was being open to listen to what the customers are saying to you, because a lot of times it's difficult for companies. They've spent 5 years developing something, 10 years, 25 years a certain way, and then they get it to market, and they don't really want to hear that they're missing something. Because this is my baby. Don't call it ugly on me, or don't tell me I needed to have red hair, because this is. I think that's a really crucial element that you mentioned as well.
Yeah, right now, obviously we have a steering committee for our product roadmap and the things that we're doing to innovate, but ultimately we're listening to customers and allowing customers to inform the evolution of our product in the market. Understanding that what we're providing is a tool. Like, we're not the hero in the story. The provider who uses that tool effectively is the hero in the story. We're just the sword for the warrior per se in that. And our job is to make the absolute best objective cognitive assessment out there. And that's going to be an evolving thing where, we all have, lofty and, really, just outlandish ideas on how far this can go. But ultimately, it's all about being extremely disciplined and understanding, the product roadmap is going to be informed by the customer, and using these formation years to really niche down on the product and make it as excellent as possible. And that way it doesn't, if it scales out incredibly fast and just, has widespread adoption and goes crazy, and then you find like one little product fix or one little glitch in your software, then you think about, resource management internally. How do you go speak to, 50,000 customers who are now having this thing? So it's just really, really strategic to keep that focus around that part.
I like the way of framing the objective. It's not to get the product out there, right? This is the tool to achieve the objective of the outcome for that patient. And if you keep the eye on not how do we get the product deployed or get used, it's like, how is this tool being used right to achieve that objective? It's much easier to see the changes that need to happen and be open to the changes that need to happen.
And you make a good point. In the neurology space, it's, the brain is complex. The nervous system is extremely complex. And our job, while we have a tremendous amount of, just internal knowledge capital around that space with, our neuroscience and our research team, our job is to make this incredibly simple. So our job is always to make the easiest to use and the most simplified version of our product, to where people can, just adopt it and understand it just as easy as, 80/120 for the brain. For the blood pressure.
Yeah. No, understood. That makes, I love it. Simplifying complex is the sign of true genius, right? Yeah. So I have bringing people on, IP is important, having the product is important, but having the right team, especially in a startup, especially in a new company. You've done a couple. What suggestions do you have for people in your same, position that need to attract the right people? What have you done? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I say that, belief, and belief in something being bigger than something that, belief in something that's bigger than yourself. For me, that's how I always enter a company. So when I looked at NeuroCatch, and I went up and spent some time with the company before I actually committed to, actually taking a position at the company. And once I saw the global impact and the human condition that can be improved by such a product, and I believed in the product, that's all I needed from there. So then my job when I'm hiring people is for people to understand the narrative and the vision and the purpose behind what we're doing. Like that matters so much, because if you're driven by purpose, you won't have to have Derek giving you a call to give you a nudge here and there. It's that we're trying to make the best product in the world to solve a very complex problem that is coming at us like a fire hose right now. And for me, it's all about hiring people who are, purpose-driven people. I also look for, like individual entrepreneurs. Like I tell people all the time, like I like to find people who bring solutions. Like I should not be the person always bringing a solution. You're the subject matter expert. Like my job is to hire extremely talented people who are always have like this entrepreneurial mindset to where they're trying to innovate and evolve things and move things forward. And then my job is to support the heck out of you and help you with the right resources and whatever I can do to, for you to be excellent at your job.
I love that. It's really finding those people that are mission driven. It's we people and have that ability, as I like to say, that to do well in ambiguity, to thrive in ambiguity. Because an entrepreneur, there isn't a roadmap. You've got to figure it out. You got to come up with solutions, and to have those people that are solutions focused with a mission usually fits right. I think that sounds right. I'm curious, as the future, if we're looking forward, where do you see, HealthCatch, in 3, 5, 10 years, whatever horizon makes the most sense for you?
Yeah. For us, I would say our BHAG is to have NeuroCatch as the standard of care for cognitive assessment. So when you go into your GP, part of the workup is going to be that you would get a NeuroCatch scan as part of either your annual assessment, and definitely if you come in reporting of anything that's of neurological origin or brain oriented, that a NeuroCatch scan is going to be the preferred choice for cognitive assessment, in the clinical setting. And we just feel like that'll help us, with things like early detection and recognizing things before, they become a problem, because ironically, the body is really good at hiding things. And for what we see in the research and in the data is that it takes about 15 years for a neurological disease to actually be, noticeable, to where it's like, wow, I'm really forgetting things now, or I don't feel like I'm like my cognitive function is just impaired or delayed. That's about 15 years into the, and of course there's just more of acute events, but overall somebody can be declining for 15 years before they ever realize it's an issue. And we feel that our product is, has the ability to provide data to be able to show subtle cognitive changes much earlier in that, trajectory.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Well, if someone wants to get a hold of you, interested in joining the team, interested in the product for their clinic, what's the best way they can find NeuroCatch?
So our website is neurocatch.com. That's probably the easiest way. We're also on LinkedIn and social media, so that would be the quickest way to look us up. And we're like, as we're commercializing right now, we're bringing on new talent within, in the U.S. market. So if anybody out there is interested in being part of a science-backed, purpose-driven company who is really has a culture based on improving the human condition through a better understanding of brain health, we'd love to interface with you and learn how we can work together to accomplish this mission.
It's awesome. Hey, Derek, I really appreciate you taking the time, telling us about you and NeuroCatch, what the opportunity is, and providing some lessons. I think there's, some really good nuggets for entrepreneurs of any stripe, and how to think about staying focused, how to find the talent that's mission driven, being open to feedback and keeping the outcome in mind, not the product in mind. So some really exceptional ideas, and I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing it with us and all the Floodgate family.
Well, I appreciate you, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you and your audience today. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.